For the past few years in League of Legends, North American teams have had lackluster international performances and often even in their domestic leagues are seen as subpar compared to other regions, particularly the other major regions of Korea, Europe, China, even sometimes Taiwan for the highest tier teams. Part of this is outside anyone's control, such as the numbers of people who are playing ranked, the percentages of the server that is dedicated to ranked just being much lower in North America compared to the other major regions, at least most of them. But there is an area in which a lot of factors are actually contributing against it that can be changed. And the most frustrating one from my perspective is Riot's condemnation of players who are rude, who use lots of foul language, who go on tirades on social media. These players are labeled as toxic, and toxicity is considered a massive problem in League of Legends, both by its community and by the developer of the game. If you've had human moments, be it somebody in the chat of the game getting the better of you, you getting frustrated at the play of your team or a specific teammate, if you've had someone who's bothering you in your Twitch chat while you're streaming and egging you on and trying to get a reaction out of you, if you've got somebody doing the same exact thing but on Twitter or on Facebook or on any other form of social media where there is a person following another person and there's some form of communication between those two people, if you are a high-level player, if you are one of the best mechanical players at the game, playing high level on the North American ladder in ranked solo queue, and you have one of these human moments, or you have too many human moments, or one of these moments where you just can't handle all of that and you deal with it in a negative way, you lash out at the person. You know, we all have our moments, right? If one of these moments happens to be seen by the right or wrong person, depending on your point of view, or if you simply have too many that it's inevitable that somebody makes a Reddit thread and it gets upvoted to the front page and everybody starts taking notice of your conduct, chances are action from or reaction from Riot Games themselves is not far behind. Maybe a team isn't interested in picking you up or giving you a shot, even if you're the most skilled applicant on paper, because one of their other team members has played solo queue with you. And they've decided, well, this player's toxic. I don't think he's really cut out for a team environment. And yeah, that doesn't have anything to do directly with Riot, but they've created this environment where toxicity is considered a negative thing, where even the word toxic even comes into play, and part of it does stem back from Riot Light and them trying to make the internet a better place and that whole initiative. But you know, maybe that's the case. Maybe you just don't make the cut of the team, and maybe there's some problem there where, you know, just because you got into an argument with the wrong player on the wrong team, well, then they're not interested in even trying you out because the manager's decided to reach out to you, but before he does that, he asks for a recommendation from one of his players and yada, 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 so on and so forth. Maybe you're just denied entry into a drafting event because of some conduct that you had outside of League of Legends, outside of even playing the game. That's definitely a possibility now, as we've seen in the past in the past year, past 6 months. Maybe you're just outright banned from playing the game, just forever, indefinitely, permanently, across all accounts that they know that you happen to use. Maybe you just have to wait an undetermined amount of time to see if your ban is ever going to get an appeal, ever going to potentially be lifted, if they'll even consider lifting your ban over at Riot. Now, I will say this much. A lot of the players in these human moments haven't been particularly kind. I mean, obviously, there have been some truly off-the-wall, crazy things said by some of these players. And while I personally am absolutely against censorship and language policing, I do accept that at a certain point, you have to draw the line if you're going to run a professional broadcast. Even if I don't agree with the tenets of that position, I still recognize that that kind of battle isn't winnable in the current environment that we exist in the context of current esports broadcasts. And, you know, really talking about that is something that should be its own video. So moving on, I still think that in the cases that I will present to you in this video, you'll find that Riot Games, when they're making these rulings, they look at behavior outside of players actually playing the game, League of Legends, and sometimes they'll even look outside of anything connected to League of Legends. They'll look at conduct that has nothing to do, with no relation to the player's conduct while playing League of Legends, or it isn't at all connected whatsoever. And they use this information as evidence, as ammunition for these rulings, and they use this stuff against these players while deciding to ban them or deny them from events or whatever. Now, adhering to recency bias, the first case I'm going to go with is the permanent ban of Consensual Clown, which occurred on the 9th of May in 2017. Consensual Clown has a long history of negative behavior reports, getting too heated at the game, upset when his team doesn't try hard to win. He's been called an inter, an intentional feeder. He's certainly channeled this frustration and anger in negative ways at times. But look at the guy's performance in the game League of Legends, not in the mental game of playing League of Legends and balancing out like, well, I'm really frustrated at this guy because he just went 0-3 in top lane, and now there's no way I'm going to win this game, or my chances are much lower. But forget about that. Just him playing the game League of Legends, you can't deny the guy's skill. He's rank 1 on the North American server, or was before he was permanently banned. And he's almost always been in the top percentage of players, regardless of what server he's on, regardless of whether or not he was banned or suspended from playing on his account. He had another account that he would get up very high up on the ladder without fail every season. And yet this guy was banned. Not for elo boosting, not for account sharing, not for intentionally feeding, not for negatively impacting the gameplay of other people playing the game League of Legends. No, he was banned for typing words in chat. Take a second to wrap your head around that. Really, I know most people have already made up their minds. They think, oh yeah, you type these words in chat and these words have negative connotations and meanings and people get upset about these words, so it makes sense. No, really think about what that means. Analyze this reality. The hands down best mechanical player not already on a professional team in League of Legends was banned for pressing the enter key on his keyboard. Now, plenty of people will undoubtedly come out and say things like, well, if you're toxic, if you're rude, you swear, you insult other people, you're going to get repercussions. Yeah. Guess what? Those repercussions of that kind of behavior are social, and they do affect your career, but they don't require a third party or actual developer of the game to come in and say, well, we see your conduct in this case hasn't really been up to par with what our standards are, so we're just going to remove you from the game. I'll give you some examples. It's honestly like you have a mute button, right, in the game. So when you have repeated, like a history or a reputation that precedes you, as soon as they see your name in the lobby as you load into the game for champ select, they're going to say, oh yeah, Consensual Clown, fuck this guy. Oh, he's got a temper on him, better not egg him on, better mute him actually, so that if I am somebody who's upset by words on a screen that I read, and there are many of people who are like this, certainly not saying that there aren't. If you happen to be one of those people, you're playing with Consensual Clown, well, you know what you're getting into after a while because of his reputation. I mean, people play with each other all the time, with and against each other all the time in high-level League of Legends, regardless of what server they're on, but especially in North America where this ranked player base is so low and where queue times are, so high, without sorting it into, challengers with mid diamonds and stuff. We already see this on these players' Twitters, funnily enough. So it's actually pretty likely. It's reasonably likely that Consensual Clown could have been put into a game where the other 9 players in the game already had him muted, if the mute button was used as it's intended. Or if these players were sensitive to that information, to words being on the screen typed at them, and they don't like that, well, they can mute them. And if you're muted by everybody in the game, then obviously you can't communicate. Even if it's just the 4 members that are on your team, you not being able to communicate with even just one member on your team because they've muted you because of your past conduct, well, that inhibits team communication. That stops you from winning the game, potentially. That hampers your chances, lowers your chances of winning whatever solo queue game you're in, and however many solo queue games you're in with that player that has muted you. That it puts you at a disadvantage. It lowers your communication. And this is on you. Remember, you've done something regardless of whether or not you agree with the other person muting you, you have done something to spark this player's decision to mute you in this game. So it is eventually, you know, you go back, even if you disagree with their reasoning for doing it, it is on you. So in this case, Consensual Clown, well, he has to own that. He's going to be like, well, something I did pissed this guy off. He's muted me. Even if I don't agree with that, I still have to live with that reality. This guy's muted me. I can't communicate with him. I can't tell him, hey, I think this guy is going to come and gank us. Can we back up if he happens to be his support and he's an AD carry main? So let's take this a step further, though. Let's remove this from just playing the game on a solo queue level. Let's imagine Consensual Clown is playing for a professional team, say Echo Fox, and he's toxic, like everyone says he is. Well, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if you're a shitty teammate, your other teammates are going to figure this out. They're going to become aware of this fact, and they're probably going to complain to their management, they're going to complain to each other, and eventually, if it gets this bad, if it gets as bad as Riot is postulating it is, and presenting it to us as, by banning him from the game permanently with no way back in without waiting several years like I Will Dominate had to, then you're probably going to just get kicked from the team, or the threat of being kicked from the team will motivate you to change your behavior. But if you're unsuccessful in changing your behavior, if you can't change your behavior, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to kick you from the team, and you're going to be labeled as this person was kicked from the team because of their negative attitude. People tend to be pretty clear and open about this because they want to know, their fans are going to want to know why Consensual Clown ranked 1 NA, why was he kicked from Echo Fox? This is a team that could stand to improve in the standings. They could stand to use a great 80 carry. I mean, we all know what Keith's been up to lately, dying. So let's get Consensual Clown in there. He's a really good player. He's a good mechanical player. He'd probably do well. Maybe they could even do Keith and Consensual Clown. Well, why is he kicked? What happened? Well, then you're going to go look at the press release, and they're probably going to say, well, due to player behavior reasons, Consensual Clown will no longer be playing for Echo Fox in this alternate timeline where he is playing for Echo Fox in the first place. And now other teams are going to be aware of his behavior, be aware that he was kicked, at least based on the story that Echo Fox is giving, they're going to be aware that he was kicked for player behavior reasons. What does this mean? This means that now any team that's looking to pick him up, challenger scene, LCS team, whatever, they're going to recognize that there's a risk involved in picking up Consensual Clown. They're going to recognize, oh, this guy is considered toxic, or, in this alternate timeline where toxicity doesn't exist and Consensual Clown is allowed to play, they're going to recognize this guy doesn't have, the best teamwork. He's not a great teammate, potentially. That's why you'd think that's why he got kicked. So this just impacts Consensual Clown's career from the future. Now he is going to get far less team offers than if he were a pleasant teammate and was kicked for performance reasons, even potentially, or just wasn't a great fit for that team, but they don't say kicked for behavior reasons, kicked because he was an asshole to everybody around him. When you don't have that in your press release, when you're being removed from a team, chances are you'll get a second chance a lot easier than somebody who does. So again, this social repercussion for being a shitty teammate, for being what Riot dubs toxic, it just happens. It happens naturally. The teams are going to be savvy about this. Notice the word toxic isn't needed in this context to describe this player's behavior, to explain why this player was removed from a team. And notice how the players and the teams in the ecosystem of League of Legends esports are able to make their own decisions without Riot stepping in. They're able to decide for themselves whether or not this is a good choice to bring this player on, to keep him on despite his attitude issues. And I mean, this isn't just a thought experiment either, because obviously with players like Soaz, who have been dubbed uncoachable by the community and other people who have played with them on a professional level, well, Soaz, he's just very set in his ways. He's not very coachable, not very receptive to coaching. So what can we even do with this guy? I mean, we're just gonna have to get a top laner who's more coachable. Even if he's not as good as Soaz is, or doesn't have as deep a champion pool as Soaz is, he'll still be better for the team. He'll still respond better to coaching. So let's remove Soaz. Let's get a different player. Or Forgiven. I mean, this guy's been suspended before, and you know, we've seen how skilled this guy is, how fantastically skilled at playing the game League of Legends is, less fantastically skilled at playing the teammate game, less fantastically skilled at that, clearly, and has had his ups and downs and does carry an ego and an emotion, you know, social behavioral baggage in that sense. So Riot doesn't need to step in and ban these players. No, that's not the case at all. These two players have gone up and down in their careers. Forgiven may have moved completely away from League, over to Overwatch or wherever he is now. But so as right now, gone back to Fnatic, and you know, from Fnatic to Origin to Fnatic again, and you know, they've had their ups and downs. They've been considered, you know, washed up or whatever. But the teams take risks on these players, and whether or not it pans out, that's up to the players, that's up to the infrastructure, that's outside of this conversation. The point is, Riot never had to step in and say, well, Forgiven's toxic, so we're just going to ban him from ever playing the game again, ever playing on an official capacity. No, the teams decided whether or not it was a good enough idea to pick Forgiven up, and usually it worked out for them. So after, you know, without that is a process, and Riot doesn't trust that process. Clearly, they don't trust the players, the teams, the organizations to make what they would call the right decision, and to filter these negative players out if they happen to be more trouble than they're worth. So they step in. They don't even give anyone a chance to try this player out, to give them a shot and try and coach them, improve their social skills, their ability to cope with the anger and frustration that comes with playing. Just comes with the territory of playing competitive anything. It's intrinsic to the high-level competition in any field, regardless. It doesn't even have to be a sport. You're a nurse. Well, if you're a doctor and your nurse is not pulling her own weight, I mean, that's going to frustrate you, right? Even that's not even necessarily, you're competing against like illnesses and shit, that not even other human beings. So forget about the context of esports. It still doesn't make any sense. Obviously, if you're going to be able to filter that out yourself, you're going to be able to decide for yourself if this is a good pickup, if this is a good team member for whatever you happen to be doing. But these players are just labeled as toxic. They're denied entry to the pro scene. Sometimes they're even banned from the game outright, like we just saw with Consensual Clown. Let's move on from Clown, though. Let's go over another example. 17th of November, 2016, Tarzan. Everybody knows this story. The rank 1 player, the then rank 1 player on the North American ladder, best jungler in the amateur scene, not already on the team. This is what people were calling this guy. He was denied entry into the scouting grounds, which were, it's like a small tournament based around organizing amateur talent together into teams that would play with the support of LCS organizations. And the idea around this event is to foster growth of the amateur scene, get more players from the ladder that aren't picked up by teams right now into a challenger team or into an LCS team as a substitute or a starting spot, whatever the case may be. This happened for plenty of players, but Tarzan was not one of them because he wasn't even allowed into the event, despite being arguably the most skilled player, even in the running to go into the event in the first place. No matter what you think of Tarzan the person, you go back and talk to anybody from that region who had an opinion and had significance in the scene. And doesn't matter what they think of who this guy is as a person. Tarzan the player, nobody was doubting this guy's skill. People were calling him the next Dardoch. People were saying this player who has mechanics that could potentially stand toe-to-toe with top LCS pros. Clearly, I mean, in many ways they were right, considering his rank on the ladder, where LCS pros, guess what? They play solo queue sometimes there, believe it or not. So, you know, much like Consensual Clown in this way, actually, Tarzan is a great player mechanically, can play the game League of Legends, excellent at being a player of League of Legends, but not so much at being a teammate, not so much as playing the house of cards of League of Legends in that sense, not so much very politically correct, obviously, not great at networking, right? This is what we'll call it. It's sort of soften the impact there of that reality. But because of his personality, because of these flaws, because of the letters he chose to type on his keyboard, he was denied entry into this amateur event that could have been the springboard of his professional career. This could have launched him into a successful role in North American League of Legends and helped him out in that aspect. He could have helped a team out. He could have helped represent North America as a region with high-level skills, high-level League of Legends play. This guy was an exciting figure in the scene, but he wasn't even on a team yet. People were already rooting for him to wreck kids in the scouting grounds, or whatever else they were asking him to do, whatever else he was promising them. You know, is a figure that brings more than just mechanical skill, but also a bit of back talk. You know, he's got that bad boy vibe from being called toxic all the time. Of course, he's going to try and use this to his advantage to some degree. You know, I don't understand. Really, this is honestly where Riot's way of dealing with this issue gets really sickening, truly sickening. Not only are they starting with what Tarzane types to other players who have full agency to mute him whenever they decide that they're being bothered by what he's typing, Riot came to this ruling. They decided not to let Tarzane participate in the scouting grounds, in large part because of his conduct on Twitter, a social media site that is in no way connected to the game League of Legends or Riot Games, the developer. I don't know how anyone can justify this. I don't know anyone who has even tried to justify this. Honestly, how do you go that far down a rabbit hole of trying to make the internet a better place, that your idea of a fair system involves evidence that isn't even related to your game? Unless Tarzane is breaking laws on social media, his conduct outside of playing the game League of Legends should never enter into a ruling on whether or not he's allowed to play the game League of Legends. Yet that's what Riot has done. Inarguably, they've decided that the line they're going to draw, the line you would better not cross if you're an aspiring professional player, is whether or not you behave in a negative light in their eyes on social media that they have nothing to do with, that they have no connection to, that their game has no connection to. This has nothing to do with playing the game League of Legends. If I'm a manager for a professional team, I don't give a fuck whether Tarzane yells at people on Twitter or rages at people in chat. If their skills, if their skills are as good as everybody seems to say they are, I'll take a risk when the potential gains are that high. And that's my prerogative. Even if nobody is willing to take a risk on this player, the option should still at least be there. But Riot has ensured that nobody has that option now. So now these players, who are amazing at playing the game League of Legends, cannot do that professionally, cannot chase glory, cannot help represent the best of what their region has to offer, despite having all the prerequisites, all the skill, all the talent, presumably the dedication needed to remain on top for long periods of time, given how long these players dominated the ladder. They don't get an opportunity to do any of that. Instead, more likely, they're relegated to elo boosting for money. Hopefully it pays well for them. But it's clearly not what they were looking for when they entered into the scouting grounds, or tried to, in Tarzane's case. Think about all of the epic players in the history of League of Legends. You can go past this and think about in esports in general. Imagine if Riot ran the whole esports ecosystem. But think of just in League of Legends, just in the context of League. Think about all of the players that the esports world would have been worse off if not for their inclusion, if not for them playing the game. Forgiven, Doublelift, Soaz, Uzi. Those are four I'll list off the top of my head. These players all have reputations of bringing their egos wherever they go. Guess what? Doesn't matter. Because they also bring insane amounts of skill at playing the game League of Legends, which is their job. Doublelift, regarded as one of the best mechanical players ever to play the game, arguably the best North American player for multiple seasons, the only player to win his domestic split on 2 different teams. Soaz, arguably one of the best top laners to ever play the game, with one of the most diverse champion pools in the history of the role, stands out as one of the most dynamic players, made it to the semifinals of Worlds 2 separate times on 2 separate teams. Forgiven helped carry HTK to a semifinals finish in 2016 Worlds. They stood as arguably one of the top 4 teams in the entire world. Uzi brought his team to 2 back-to-back finals at the Season 3 and Season 4 World Championships, losing only to the very best teams of that era. And yet none of these stories happen without teams taking risks by picking up incredibly talented individuals that happen to carry behavioral baggage, that are difficult to work with, that require behavior coaching, perhaps even more so than performance coaching. Imagine if Riot decided, this Doublelift guy, he seemed awfully toxic on CLG. What's that, TSM? You're going to pick him up, give him another chance at the professional level? Nah, we're just going to ban him. Imagine that. Imagine Forgiven being banned after his time on Copenhagen Wolves. We never see him play for SK Gaming and do so well in the regular split, carrying his team, getting triple ban, double ban every game internationally and domestically. We never see him play for Gambit. Struggle some at the beginning. By the end of the split, look better until, by the way, Riot suspends him for Toxicity in the middle of the team's playoff run. Fucking hell, that's disgusting. And we never see him play for H2K and make a name for himself. Leave a legacy that lasts, knowing that he was part of the top 4 teams in 2016. I mean, it's just... How can you imagine a world, a reality, where these players don't impact the ecosystem of League of Legends in that sense? Tarzane could be the next big success story of North America. So could Consensual Clown. It's impossible to say for sure, but the only way to never find out is to ban them. To say that all the teams that maybe want to take a risk on a very talented player who's just pissed off that his teammates aren't trying as hard as he is, or just aren't as good as he is, and don't know how to best deal with that frustration. Actually, you can't pick that guy up. He's too toxic. There is in no way your responsibility as the developer of the game League of Legends, unless something horrible, something illegal has happened. Policing player conduct at the highest level of competition should be the job of the teams that participate in that competition, not some detached god complex motherfuckers who think that because they made the game League of Legends, they should have a say in what the players play the game League of Legends. That doesn't make sense. That's not how you foster growth in a competitive scene. And I challenge anyone to make a convincing case that condemning anyone who simply hasn't grown up enough and hasn't had enough life experience to know how to behave properly when they're fucking 17 and 18 years old as toxic and damaged goods, and as such removing them from the pool of talent that the teams have to pick from is good for anyone involved.